Hello again. Okay, so in our mini series about the function report, this particular section is on question number 20, section A. I have to break it up into A because it's a long one, and I think it goes up to L or something. So let's just do 20A. Okay, so this one is about information about your abilities, of course, and you'll see that there's 4 columns of tasks. These are tasks that are all implicated in various work occupations to some degree or another. Some of them are physical, some of them are mental, or cognitive, if you will. So, couple broad pieces of advice. Don't assume anything, such as how much you can lift, how far you can walk, unless you've actually checked it out. So get out there and see what you can do. Go out, take a walk. If you find you can only, obviously don't do it if you've been medically advised not to. So use your noodle with that. But people make assumptions that, oh, I can only walk for about an hour. I'm like, oh, wow. So you can walk 3 miles, at a standard, non-fast pace. They're like, no, I can't go 3 miles. I'm lucky if I can get a block. I'm like, well, then why did you say you could walk for an hour? I'm like, does it take you an hour to do a block? So don't be sloppy. Don't be sloppy. For everything here on these lists, these 4 columns, assume that you are looking at an 8-hour workday. Can you do lifting of something for an 8-hour workday? Can you do squatting 8 hours in a day? Can you do, because what they look at is if someone can never do something, and very few of us never do something, at least at the lowest of weights or whatever, even if we don't hardly ever do it. Usually it's not never, but there can be. Occasional, which is up to 1/3 of a workday. The SSA looks at it as being minimal. And they might say someone could do occasional, but if you can only lift a gallon of milk twice, that's not 1/3 of a workday, right? So it gets really crazy, and we have to try to make it as representative of your capacities as possible. So think about an 8-hour workday and doing something. There's, again, never, occasionally, frequently, which is 2/3 of the workday. That's like 6 hours. And then constantly, which is the whole time, right? Beyond 6 hours up to 8. So think of it as constantly, because again, as the way I see it, you're being taken as a person who is fully able to do everything until you say and prove otherwise. So they take you as a Superman or Superwoman, and what you say here is what you are saying you can do, which if it contradicts what your medical records say, that might not bode well for the credibility of your medical records. So we don't want to do that either, right? If you're representing that you can do something when you really can't do it for an 8-hour day. So when you explain, because they're going to ask down here, you're going to check these off, and then down, I guess you can't even see what I'm looking at. In the big square, you're going to explain more details. If you have any limitations to doing these in a full-time day, that's what you're going to mention. Like, I can lift, but only, extremely light, if you don't know the amount. Or I can, what I see is if you say I can lift 25 pounds, they're going to say, oh, he's not even restricted to a sedentary job. That's late. That constitutes late, which is much more exertional than sedentary. So if you're not clarifying that, and you don't have a lot of space. So if what the reality is that in an 8-hour day, you would have to be doing something extremely light, like a file folder, holding your pen, holding your cell phone, then I can lift up to, because I would assume it's for a full day. I can lift only very light weights, on a consistent basis. Squatting. Now, if you can do one squat, but you can't do 5, does that mean you could do them? Well, what jobs require 1 that don't require you be doing it all throughout your shift? You know, for jobs that require squatting. Bending, is it bending to the floor? Is it just bending over a table? I mean, bending has multiple degrees. I mean, from standing to 90 degrees, which is straight out from the waist down to the floor. So you really want to clarify if you would be concerned about bending to the floor. I would say I can't bend to the floor because you don't think that you can do it safely without hurting yourself or falling over and hurting yourself. Standing, people say, well, of course I can stand. Think about the duration. And again, if you're not medically advised not to, give yourself a little test there, standing on your floor right now. How long can you stand straight without turning around, stretching, you know, all that kind of business? What body parts hurt, if any? If nothing hurts and you can do it endlessly, then God bless and put it down. Be honest. You might not be disabled, but you have to be honest. So my point is to be honest about what you can't do with regard to that task, because if you don't tell them, nobody else is going to tell them. Doctors don't tend to talk about it, which is one of the difficulties in this field. And it's one of the challenges you as a claimant have, will be your doctors failing to record. That's probably 99% of the problem for people who have trouble prevailing. Reaching. Think about reaching in front of you, overhead, and out to the sides. Don't just think of it as one, like, oh, of course I can reach out and grab that teddy bear or, you know, my cup of coffee. In an 8-hour workday, can you, a reaching job, consider having a reaching job. This could be, and these jobs are used all the time. Any kind of like factory work, and they use these jobs a lot to show that there's something the person could do. You know, it could be sedentary, it could be sit, stand option, and you have your hands in front of you, holding them out, working on some assembly of some kind. If you can't keep your arms out in front of you, put them out right now. Unless your doctor has told you not to, can you stick them out in front of you for half hour, unrelenting? No? Well, consider that. That maybe it should be something you should be telling them. Walking. And as you can see, these are all things that largely would relate to pain symptoms, okay? Or stability. I'm going to try to, my phone is going off. So if you don't know how far you can walk, don't just say you can walk for an hour. I've seen people say they can walk for an hour, and I'm like, as I said before, oh, so 3 miles, no problem. I don't think anyone's going to find that you can't do a light job. Sitting, people skip this one. They don't check it off, and they have a bad back, or they have edema that grows in their legs from the time they get up in the morning, and they ultimately, and sitting in a regular chair is not going to prevent that. The only kind of help that gets, aside from the medications generally or compression stockings, is often getting in a recliner and elevating them over their head. And when we're talking about sitting here, we're talking about a work type chair, not a recliner comfy chair where you can have your feet as high as your heart. So when you see sitting, know that that's what they're talking about. So again, sit down at the kitchen table, upright, proper, and see how long you can last. Just test yourself, unless your doctor has told you never to do that. Kneeling, people pretty much often know when they cannot. They have knee problems. Ironically, I mean, I don't really have, well, maybe I do, but before I did, kneeling as I got older, when I was a kid, I could kneel on a hardwood floor, not a problem. Even without significant problems, I cannot do that now. It would kill me. It would really hurt. So consider that. And by the way, anything that you check off, when you know what the impairment is that leads to that or not, you need to be seeing a specialist for that problem, or else you are hurting your case. Talking and hearing, talking might be something more akin to breathing problems, throat problems. We don't see that often. Hearing, obviously, if you're hearing impaired in any way. Stair climbing is up over with the walking, lifting, all that kind of business. Usually if you have trouble walking or standing, you're going to have trouble stair climbing. And when you think about stair climbing, think about also being winded, whether you need to use a railing or if you could manage like you could, 20 years ago without a railing. Seeing, that tends to be more about vision problems. Sometimes some conditions cause vision problems. Some people have medication can cause some blurriness or double vision. So you're going to want to think about that and think about how frequently that may happen if that happens to you. Okay, these next three: memory, completing tasks, concentration. I would say the next column too: understanding, following instructions. I don't know a single person with a pain-related impairments that cause pain that don't have concentration problems, at least intermittently. So you need to, I mean, unless you're Superman or Superwoman, if pain is so, to not have concentration problems implies that the pain is very mild, and therefore why are you not working? So the way I see it, give some thought. Can you balance your checkbook when your pain level is heightened? Say after you've had the end of your day, and even though you're being gentle at home and you haven't been working, does the minor upright tasks that you do during just for your activities of daily living, do they heighten your pain? And if so, what can't you concentrate on? Completing tasks. If your pain stops you from getting a full chore done in the normal time, you're not completing your task in a timely manner. That's affected. And I should go up and re-emphasize that the directions say, check any of the following items that your illness, injuries, or conditions affect. It doesn't say check the ones that you can't do, because most of the time we can do something, even if it's just once, So I see people just barely checking anything off. I'm like, wait a minute. You can't even do, and they're like, oh, I didn't understand that's what it meant. I'm like, it says anything that they affect. So if anything is, again, if you can't do it constantly through an 8-hour day, that means it's affected, because back in the day when we're unimpaired, we can do all of these things all day long. Okay. Unless we were born with some sort of condition that would have impeded that. So concentration, completing tasks, memory, pain, and lack of concentration also seems to impair memory to some degree. And there's different kinds of memory, and I'm not going to get into that, but if we're not concentrating on something, we're probably not going to remember it. We're not focused on it. So our memory, I think, will be different. Then there's also medications that affect our memory. Or we can literally have declining memory because none of us are getting any younger. So think about that. Think about the times you forget, leave the stove on, forget your keys, forget you had a conversation. That's a big one. Following instructions. I'll tell you, 95% of the people, 99% of the people who fill out my data form where I obtain this information when I help them put it together for their function report, they don't follow the instructions right. So they they don't check that one off. I'm like, you just missed like 90% of the questions. So I'm not so sure you're following instructions very well. Using hands, big one, big. That's because most sedentary jobs, which is what many of us have to prove that we can't do, require bilateral hand use. So if you have difficulties with your hands, it could be that it only starts after you use them a little bit. It could be that you wake up and they're swollen or achy or stiff. Even if you're not treating for it, and you better start now, check it off if you have limitations, because that can impede a job that requires that you have constant or frequent use of your hands in a proficient manner. Fingers, wrists, all implicate hand use. And that's a huge part of many, many jobs. And remember, the goal is we have to eliminate all 12,000 occupations in the economy, including the ones that require hand use. So even if the other things, sedentary was fitting and you could do this, but you need to frequently be able to use your hands and maybe do fine fingering or manipulation or just grabbing things, which again would also be connected to the reaching, of course, right? Getting along with others, like concentration, that one is often, aside from the fact if you don't have an organic problem like anger management or a mental health condition or illness that actually causes really, really difficult behaviors with that. If it's what we see most of the time for most people, it stems from the irritability that some people develop. I'd say a lot of them when they're dealing with chronic pain for so long. They have trouble, they have less tolerance for other people's silliness. They lose their filter, as they say. And then they start to have interpersonal problems with friends, family, or coworkers. So if you were working and you were having difficulty with coworkers suddenly, give some thought as to whether that had to do with your pain making you less tolerant of their silliness or their behaviors. Again, be very careful when you want to quantify something exactly. How much can you lift? You could be putting yourself in a difficult spot later if what you were saying was something that would be defined as able. And you don't know what those definitions are. So you want to tread very cautiously here. If you're not positive what your limitations are, don't guess. Just say, I don't know exactly how much, but it's very light. You're not supposed to answer and guess if you don't know the answer. Okay. Again, I say, unless your doctor tells you otherwise, you can go test yourself. But other than that, unless you know for sure, don't guess. It's going to stick with your file for the rest of the time, and it could be a contributing cause, at the very least, to a denial. Okay, so that's the end of question 20A. I'll get on to the rest at a different video, but I hope it helps you. Any questions, you know how to reach me. Bye. Have a great day.